They called me a witch and tried to shave my hair off in my own kitchen. They laughed while I sat there old and small, thinking I was finished. But they forgot one thing: I built that house. And I still own my name. Now I'm the one writing the final chapter. The silver kettle hissed softly in the corner of the Boston brownstone kitchen, steam curling like memory. Evelyn Brooks, 82, poured herself a cup of Earl Grey, hands trembling slightly but precise. She was humming the same tune she used to calm her son when he was 5. Then the sound cut, metal scraping on metal. Lindsay stood behind her laughing with 2 friends still holding their wine glasses from brunch. "Come on, Grandma Witch, let's give you a makeover." The scissors gleamed under the midday light. The laughter wasn't playful, it was performance. One hand yanked back Evelyn's thin white hair. The other lifted the blades as if the gray itself offended her. For a second, Evelyn didn't move. She saw the reflection in the microwave door, her own eyes small but steady, not afraid awake. "Put them down," she said, her voice soft but sharp enough to slice through the giggles. "Oh, lighten up." Lindsay smirked. "It's just a joke." Evelyn rose slowly from her chair. Her knees cracked, but her dignity didn't. "You think this is funny?" The room stilled. Steam curled between them. Her brooch, a small silver flower pinned to her cardigan, caught the light as she stepped forward. "This house has survived 3 generations," she said quietly, "but it won't survive cruelty." The words landed heavy, colder than the steel in Lindsay's hand. Evelyn took the scissors, set them gently on the table, and turned away. Outside, a snowflake hit the window. Inside, the temperature dropped without touching the thermostat. The kettle sang softly in the old brownstone kitchen, the steam wrapping around the window like mist. Evelyn Brooks, 82, poured Earl Grey into her favorite porcelain cup, the one with a tiny chip near the handle. She smiled faintly. It had survived longer than most things in this house. Then she heard the snip. Behind her, Lindsay's laughter sliced the air. 2 of her brunch friends leaned against the counterphones, ready. "Hold still, Grandma Witch. Let's freshen you up," Lindsay said, raising the scissors high as if this humiliation were a game. Evelyn froze. The cold metal brushed her scalp sharp and sudden. The laughter around her didn't sound human anymore, it sounded rehearsed. She caught her reflection in the microwave door, gray eyes clear, steady, ancient. "Put them down," she said quietly. "Oh, come on," Lindsay chuckled. "It's just a joke." But there was no warmth in her voice, only entitlement. Evelyn stood slow but deliberate. Her knees trembled, but her spine stayed straight. "You think this is funny?" Her tone was low, measured, the kind that made silence crawl up the walls. Steam hissed between them. The silver brooch on Evelyn's cardigan glimmered under the kitchen light. She reached out, took the scissors from Lindsay's stunned hand, and set them on the table gently, as if burying something sacred. "This house has survived more winters than you can count," she said. "It won't survive cruelty." No one spoke. The friends slipped out, murmuring excuses. Evelyn turned away, lifting her cup once more. The tea was still warm, but the room had gone cold. Steam curled from the kettle, painting the Boston kitchen window in soft fog. Evelyn Brooks, 82, moved slowly but elegantly, pouring her Earl Grey with the care of someone who had learned that small rituals kept the world from falling apart. Then came the sound snip. Lindsay stood behind her, holding a pair of silver scissors, phone camera pointed for her 2 brunch friends to giggle at. "Hold still, Grandma Witch. We'll give you a fresh start," she said, her smile too bright, too cruel. Evelyn froze. The metal brushed her scalp, cold and deliberate. The laughter wasn't friendly. It was staged, sharp, humiliating. She caught her reflection in the microwave door, thin white hair, trembling shoulders, eyes that refused to break. "Put those down," Evelyn said quietly. "Oh, come on," Lindsay scoffed. It's just a joke." The word joke hung in the air like smoke from something burning. Evelyn rose from her chair, slow but steady. Her knees wobbled. Her dignity did not. "You think cruelty is funny?" Her voice was soft, but it cut deeper than the scissors ever could. The laughter died. Even the steam stilled. The silver brooch on Evelyn's cardigan glimmered like a heartbeat. She reached out, took the scissors from Lindsay's shaking hand, and placed them gently on the table. "This house has survived war storms and debt," she said. "It won't survive disrespect." Silence followed. The women backed out one by one. Evelyn turned back to her tea. It was still warm. The room was not. The house was silent again. Too silent. Evelyn stood in the narrow hallway outside the kitchen, the smell of scorched tea leaves clinging to her cardigan. She touched the back of her head where the scissors had grazed her scalp. Her fingertips came away with a faint trace of red. In the mirror above the sideboard, her reflection looked foreign. Fragile hair, disheveled eyes rimmed with moisture. She refused to let fall. Age hadn't stolen her beauty. It had only softened it, made it easier for cruel people to pretend not to see. Her hands trembled as she reached for the brush. She tried to fix the strand Lindsay had yanked loose, but the bristles slipped from her grasp. The brush clattered into the sink. When she bent to pick it up, her fingers didn't respond right numb, like her nerves had given up. That frightened her more than the scissors. Evelyn sank into the hallway chair and pressed her hands together to feel the bones still there, still hers. The fog from the kitchen drifted in, curling around her ankles. For a moment, it looked like the mist from her childhood winters in Maine, when she'd sneak outside to catch snowflakes, and her mother would call her in before she froze. She hadn't been called back in a long time. On the mantel were photographs Lindsay had decluttered into a single-frame collage, Robert on their wedding day. Mark as a boy, little Zoe with missing front teeth. Each smile looked distant now, like postcards from a country that no longer existed. Evelyn whispered, "How did I end up the stranger in my own home?" Her phone buzzed faintly on the table. She stared at the screen, lighting up her worn reflection. A single name sat in her contacts under A.D. Ava Donnelly. It had been years since Robert's funeral, since the last time she'd had to think about protecting herself. Her thumb hovered, hesitating. Then she pressed call. A calm voice answered. "Evelyn, it's been a while." "Yes," she said, voice barely above a breath. "I think it's time we talk about the house." Outside, the fog began to lift, but not inside her. Not yet. The next afternoon, Boston rain slicked the streets like melted glass. Evelyn's umbrella trembled in her grip as she stepped off the bus, her knees stiff from the cold. The gold letters on the office door read, "Ava Donnelly, Attorney at Law." She hadn't been here in years since Robert's estate. Back then, she'd worn black and barely understood the paperwork through her grief. Today, she understood too well. Inside the room was warm and orderly. The same brass lamp with a green glass shade glowed over the same desk where Ava once handed her tissues and signatures. Now the lawyer looked older, hair-streaked silver eyes, still sharp behind tortoiseshell frames. "Evelyn Brooks," Ava said, rising with a kind smile. "You look thinner but stronger." "Sit." Evelyn lowered herself into the chair. "I need to make changes. To the house. To everything." Ava studied her. "Tell me what happened." Evelyn spoke softly, like she was afraid the walls might remember. The scissors. The word witch. The way her son hadn't looked her in the eye. The thermostat turned down the meals, forgotten the laughter that sounded like knives. When she finished, Ava didn't respond right away. She just let the silence rest like weight between them. Then she said, "You're not the first to face this, but you might be the first to fight it properly." "I'm tired of fighting," Evelyn whispered. Then don't fight, fortify, Ava said. She slid a yellow legal pad forward. Let's build armor on paper. For the next hour, the room filled with the steady sound of pen on page. Ava asked questions. Who owns the deed now, my son Mark? Since Robert died, I kept a life estate. Good. We'll amend it. Add a trigger clause. Any abuse, neglect, or coercion terminates their rights immediately. Evelyn blinked. You can do that? Ava's eyes glinted. I will do that. And we'll add competency documentation, doctor's certification, dated and signed. They can't claim you're confused. Evelyn's thin fingers brushed the rim of her teacup. For the first time in months, the porcelain didn't shake. They think I'm old, she said. They forget age doesn't mean surrender. That's exactly why this will stand, Ava replied. When the law speaks for you, they can't talk over you. Evelyn smiled faintly. Robert always said I'd outlast them all. Guess I finally understand what he meant. Ava turned the final page of notes, her handwriting crisp. We'll need proof, details, records, anything that shows a pattern. I've started, Evelyn said, pulling from her purse a folded notebook, the one with shaky entries, dates, missing groceries, thermostat pictures Zoe had sent. Ava's brows lifted in approval. Good. Keep logging. Every slight, every silence. Evelyn looked out the rain-streaked window. Drops slid down like thin veins of mercury, heavy but clear. I thought dignity was something people gave you, she murmured. Now I see it's something you defend. Ava smiled softly. Exactly. And ink is sharper than any scissors. When Evelyn rose to leave, she felt taller somehow. Outside, the rain had eased to mist. She walked slower, steadier, clutching the folder that now carried her future, a shield made of paper and will. The brooch on her cardigan caught a drop of light as she passed under a street lamp. For the first time in years, she didn't lower her eyes. That night, the house seemed heavier than usual. Evelyn sat by the window with Ava's folder spread open on the dining table. The streetlights outside Boston's Beacon Hill blurred through frost like distant candles. She ran a finger over the first page, Amendment to Life Estate Agreement. Her name looked smaller now, pressed between legal lines, but the words beneath it carried power. In the event of coercion, neglect, or harm, the grantor may revoke all rights immediately. She whispered it aloud, letting each word steady her breath. Revoked. Immediately. Her eyes lifted to the mantel where a photograph of Mark and Robert once stood. Robert's smile was kind, steady, the sort that made her believe family was forever. Mark had inherited that smile once. Now she saw only the echo of it, dulled by convenience. She remembered the day they signed the house over the champagne, the hugs, Lindsay's tears of gratitude. You'll always live here, Mom, she'd said, pressing the pen into Evelyn's hand. A pen that felt even then like a trap, disguised as kindness. Now she held a different pen, Ava's sleek black one, and signed her name again. This time, her hand didn't shake. Outside, the first snow began to fall thin and quiet. Evelyn closed the folder, slipped it into her drawer, and whispered to the window pane. This time, I'm not the guest in my own home. Winter crept in early that year, but inside the brownstone, it felt colder than outside. Evelyn woke before dawn to find her breath misting in the air. The thermostat's screen glowed a stubborn 58 degrees. She pressed the buttons, but it blinked, locked. She wrapped a shawl around her shoulders, remembering Ava's words, every slight, every silence. Write it down. Downstairs, Lindsay's voice floated from the kitchen, smooth and artificial. Sorry, gas prices are insane this winter, she said, without looking up from her phone. We're just trying to save energy. You know. You're always cold anyway. Her smile never reached her eyes. Evelyn looked toward the window. Thin frost webbed across the glass light, bleeding through it like veins. She poured herself coffee from an almost empty pot. When she opened the fridge, there was half a carton of almond milk, 3 eggs, and someone's leftover salad. Her shelf, the one she'd labeled with masking tape, was empty. The coffee was bitter. She drank it anyway. Then she took her small notebook from her cardigan pocket and wrote October 23rd. Heat off. 58 degrees. Lindsay laughed. You're always cold anyway. No groceries for me. The act steadied her. Ink was warmer than silence. Later that afternoon, Zoe appeared at the door, cheeks pink from the wind. Hi, Grandma, she whispered. I told Dad I was studying at the library. Evelyn smiled faintly. Good girl. Keep that between us. Zoe followed her upstairs and noticed the thin layer of ice forming on the inside of the window. They really turned it off, she asked. Evelyn nodded. Just one of their little lessons. Zoe pulled out her phone, snapped a picture of the thermostat, and whispered, Evidence. Time stamped. Evelyn touched her granddaughter's hand, fragile against youth's warmth. You shouldn't have to do this, she murmured. Zoe shook her head. You taught me to finish what others start. That night, Evelyn ate toast and tea alone, wrapped in 2 sweaters and an old blanket that smelled faintly of Robert's aftershave. The pipes groaned. The cold settled into her bones like a memory that refused to leave. She opened the notebook again and added, October 23rd, 9 to 42 p.m. Still no heat. But I'm not freezing, I'm documenting. She drew a small square around the last word, documenting, and underlined it twice. Downstairs, laughter spilled faintly from the television, where Lindsay watched her influencer videos about kindness and wellness. The irony didn't hurt anymore. It simply clarified things. Evelyn reached up to touch the silver brooch pinned to her cardigan. Under the dim lamplight, its center glimmered the hidden camera. Zoe had once set up, just in case. She hadn't told Ava about it yet. She would, when the time was right. Outside, snow began to fall over Beacon Hill's cobblestones. Inside, the old woman sat perfectly still, surrounded by cold air and quiet fury. Each breath a reminder that she was not defeated, merely recording. Evelyn stepped through the glass doors of Beacon Hill Assisted Living, expecting the scent of disinfectant and loneliness. Instead, she smelled lemon polish and fresh muffins. The receptionist smiled without pity. Mrs. Brooks, welcome. We've prepared your trial suite, Sunnyside, 3rd floor. Sunnyside. 2 words she hadn't heard in years. As the elevator rose, Evelyn's reflection shimmered in the brass panel, pale, tired, but still upright. Still here. Her room was small but bright. A vase of chrysanthemums sat on the table, their yellow petals wide open to the light. A window overlooked the river, and in the distance the copper dome of the State House gleamed like an old promise. She set her suitcase down and sat on the bed. The mattress didn't creak. No footsteps above her head. No thermostat locked at 58. Only silence, the good kind. When a soft piano began playing from the lounge below, Evelyn closed her eyes. The notes rose like sunlight through her ribs, warming what the brownstone's cold had tried to take. She whispered almost to herself, If peace is for sale, I'll pay with every memory I have left. That evening, she joined a small dinner table of strangers. They talked about books, recipes, gardens. No one asked who she lived with. No one called her forgetful. For the first time in years, Evelyn laughed without apology. Outside, the river shimmered gold. Inside, she realized something simple and terrifying. She didn't miss home. Not even a little. While Evelyn was learning to breathe again at Beacon Hill, Lindsay was busy curating compassion. Her latest upload blinked across thousands of phones. Caring for an elderly parent. The hidden struggles no one talks about. The thumbnail showed Lindsay in soft lighting eyes, red-rimmed hand over heart. Sometimes love means tough decisions, she said to the camera. Behind her, the kitchen looked immaculate. the same kitchen where the scissors had gleamed. The video swept through hashtags Chachi caregiver life, Chachi aging, gracefully, Chok family love. Each lie neatly filtered. Within hours, comments poured in. You're an angel. Your mother-in-law is lucky Evelyn's name was never mentioned, but everyone knew. At Beacon Hill, Zoe scrolled through the comments in disgust. She's weaponizing pity, she muttered, turning her phone toward her grandmother. Look, she edited your reflection out of the microwave frame. Evelyn smiled faintly. Sadness tucked beneath composure. Optics, dear. She's always been good at mirrors. Zoe paused the video and zoomed in on a 3-second glitch where the scissors caught the light. The blade hovered midair. A single frame showed the exact moment Evelyn had flinched. Timestamp, Zoe whispered. 1:23. She saved the clip to a secure folder. That evening, Evelyn called Ava from the small reading lounge overlooking the river. She's made me the villain, she said softly. Ava's voice came crisp through the phone. Let her. The truth doesn't need followers. It needs proof. Send me that video. Evelyn hesitated. It feels wrong to fight my own family. You're not fighting, Ava said. You're documenting. Again. Evelyn looked at her notebook, the same one lined with dates, temperatures, and cruel little quotes. She added a new entry, November 4th. Lindsay uploads caregiver video. Edited reflection. Timestamp 1:23 shows scissors midair. As her pen scratched the page, the words steadied her heartbeat. She wasn't invisible. She was archiving. Later, she scrolled through her granddaughter's messages. Zoe had captioned the clip file, Truth Unfiltered. The next morning, Beacon Hill's staff filmed a small resident highlight, smiling seniors sharing stories for the facility's social page. When they asked if she wanted to join Evelyn, surprised herself by saying yes. The camera framed her gently soft window light, haloing her hair. What's one thing you've learned this year? Mrs. Brooks, the interviewer asked. Evelyn looked straight into the lens. Her voice was calm, almost kind. That sometimes, she said, people hide cruelty behind kindness filters, but a filter can't warm a cold house. The cameraman blinked. That's powerful. She smiled. Just true. That clip, unintentionally, became Beacon Hill's most shared post that month. It reached Lindsay's feed within days. At 9:47 p.m., Zoe texted. She saw it. She posted a crying emoji. Evelyn replied with a single message. The lens works both ways. She closed her notebook, turned off the light, and for the first time in years didn't dread morning. When Evelyn returned to the brownstone, the air felt different, colder, though the heat was finally on. Lindsay was at the kitchen counter stirring a green smoothie phone propped against a candle. Her voice was sugar-coated. Oh, look, who's back? How was the little vacation Helen Mirren Evelyn hung her coat with deliberate care? Peaceful, she said. And temporary. Lindsay turned, half smiling. Good. Because this is still your home, our home. We just need boundaries. Evelyn walked to the table, set down a sealed legal envelope stamped Donnelly and Associates. Lindsay's smile stiffened. What's that? A boundary, Evelyn replied. The silence that followed hummed like an electric wire. Steam rose from Evelyn's untouched teacup as she looked her daughter-in-law straight in the eye. I've amended my estate, effective immediately. Conditions of respect are now part of the deed. Lindsay blinked. You can't, I already did. The blender's hum filled the pause, drowning her disbelief. Evelyn reached for her cup hands, steady. No more jokes, Lindsay. Not in this kitchen. Not in my home. Lindsay's jaw tightened. You're being dramatic, maybe Evelyn said softly, but drama gets remembered, and I'm done being forgettable. She lifted her tea, took a sip, and turned toward the hallway. Behind her, the smoothie whirred bright and green and pointless. Evelyn didn't look back. The line had been drawn clean as the edge of that sealed envelope. After the confrontation, the brownstone fell into uneasy quiet. Even the refrigerator hummed differently, like it too was holding its breath. Evelyn waited until evening. When the house dimmed, she walked to the fireplace mantel, that shrine of family pride that had once held photos, now replaced by minimalist decor and scented candles. She crouched, pressed her palm against the old wood panel, and slid open the hidden drawer Robert had built decades ago. Inside were receipts, hundreds of them, folded, yellowing, fragile. Each one a forgotten kindness. She laid them out on the floor like puzzle pieces, the check she'd written for Mark's first car, the down payment for their wedding, the credit card bill she'd quietly cleared during Lindsay's boutique launch. Her throat tightened. No thank you notes. No memories attached, just transactions of love that had never been repaid. She took her notebook and began copying each one carefully. Paid $1,800 Mark's Honda, 2003. Covered mortgage payment during Lindsay's layoff, 2012. No repayment requested. The ink bled slightly onto the paper blue veins of memory. When she reached the last receipt, her fingers brushed something small, tucked beneath it, a velvet pouch. Inside was the silver brooch she'd worn that awful afternoon, the one that shimmered in every painful memory since. She turned it over in her palm, tracing its delicate engraving. The faintest click sounded. Zoe's voice echoed in her memory. Her laughter. Her bright confidence. "Grandma." I added a tiny safety cam inside it, just in case something ever happens when I'm not there. Evelyn blinked, heart thudding. The camera. The brooch had recorded everything, the kitchen, the scissors, the laughter. Her hands trembled, not from fear this time, but from realization. Proof had been sitting over her heart all along. She rose and walked to the old desk by the window, booting up the small laptop Zoe had gifted her. The startup chime filled the room, bright, mechanical, almost alive. She plugged the brooch's pin-sized port into the cable. A blue light blinked. Then the screen flickered to life. There she was, her kitchen, her cup of tea, her quiet humiliation. Lindsay's hand gripping her hair, the glint of scissors, the mocking smiles. Evelyn sat motionless, watching herself endure cruelty in silence. Watching the moment dignity cracked, but didn't break. Tears welled up, but did not fall. She pressed Save As and named the file Evidence 1, Kitchen 10.22. The timestamp glowed steady. Her hands no longer shook. She transferred the video to a flash drive, labeled it with neat handwriting, and slipped it into the folder from Ava. Then she added one more entry to her notebook, November 8th. Found recording. Confirmed everything. Cold no longer just a feeling, it's evidence. As she closed the drawer, she caught her reflection in the window. Tired, yes, but luminous. The city lights of Boston flickered behind her, scattering across the glass like small, patient stars. Robert's voice seemed to echo in her mind, calm and steady. "You always keep the receipts, Eve." She smiled faintly. "Always," she whispered back. Then she turned off the lamp. Outside, snow began to fall, again, slow, deliberate, like the truth finally deciding to land. The office smelled of rain and ink. Ava Donnelly looked up from her desk as Evelyn entered, clutching a plain manila folder. "You brought something," she asked. Evelyn nodded. "Proof." Inside the folder lay the flash drive neatly labeled in her looping script, Evidence 1, Kitchen 10.22. Ava took it, slid it into her laptop, and watched the short clip in silence. The sound of laughter, the word witch, the scissors catching light, everything undeniable. When the video ended, Ava leaned back, eyes sharp. "This," she said, "is the nail in their coffin." Evelyn exhaled long and steady. "Then let's hammer it." They went through the final documents together, amendments, witness lists, property terms, notarized pages. Each signature Evelyn placed felt like a weight lifted another brick in the wall of her defense. When the last page was signed, Ava closed the folder with a quiet snap. Hearing dates set for December 3rd, she said, "They'll try to rattle you, maybe claim confusion." Evelyn smiled faintly. "I've been underestimated all my life. It's my favorite disguise." Ava chuckled, sealing the folder. "Then keep wearing it until the gavel hits." Outside, the rain had stopped. Evelyn stood at the doorway, her brooch catching the afternoon sun. "Let them come," she said softly. "I have my light." The courtroom was colder than Evelyn expected, not in temperature, in air, in posture, in eyes. Ava sat beside her, calm as marble, her folder thick with truth. Across the aisle, Lindsay and Mark looked polished, rehearsed, perfectly styled. Lindsay wore pearls. The irony didn't escape Evelyn. The judge, a woman in her 50s, adjusted her glasses. "Mrs. Brooks, are you comfortable?" Evelyn nodded. Her brooch glinted under the fluorescent lights. "Comfortable enough," Lindsay's lawyer began smoothly. "Your Honor, my clients have deep concern for Mrs. Brooks's well-being. Her recent decisions reflect possible mental decline, confusion, paranoia." Ava rose. "Objection. Speculation without evidence." "Sustained," said the judge. The lawyer smiled thinly. "We simply wish to ensure her assets remain protected from manipulation." He gestured toward Evelyn. "At her age, clarity can be unreliable." Ava's tone was ice-wrapped in silk. "Then let's test that clarity, shall we?" She approached the bench, inserted a flash drive into the courtroom monitor. The screen lit up Evelyn's kitchen. Steam laughter. Then the word that cut through decades of dignity. "She's a witch. Shave the witch." The courtroom froze. Lindsay's face drained of color. The judge's eyes narrowed. "Is that your voice, Mrs. Park?" Lindsay stammered. It was a joke." "No further questions," Ava said. Silence swallowed the room. Even Mark's jaw twitched, shame creeping where denial used to live. Ava spoke again, steady and lethal. "Your Honor, this recording was taken from a device belonging to my client. It, along with documented neglect temperature logs, missing food, locked closets, illustrates coercion and emotional abuse." She slid forward the final document. "Mrs. Brooks is not confused. She's aware. And she's choosing self-preservation over convenience." The judge folded her hands. Noted. She turned to Evelyn. "Do you have anything to add, ma'am?" Evelyn stood slowly. Every joint protested, but her voice did not. "They said I was confused," she began. "But confusion isn't forgetting what's real. It's pretending cruelty is care. I may be old, but I'm not blind." A soft murmur rippled through the gallery. The judge nodded once her tone clipped. "Exhibit A accepted. We'll reconvene in 2 weeks for ruling." The gavel struck sharp as thunder. Evelyn sat back down, breath trembling but steady. Ava leaned close, whispering, "You didn't just survive that. You commanded it." Evelyn smiled faintly. "Feels strange," she said, "to finally be heard." Outside, snow fell in slow, defiant spirals, each flake landing like a verdict the world had been too afraid to give. The recess bell chimed like a release valve, but the air in the corridor was still heavy. Evelyn stood by the vending machine, hands wrapped around a paper cup of bitter coffee she didn't intend to drink. Ava had stepped out to take a call. For the first time since the hearing began, Evelyn was alone. Then came the voice she knew too well. "Mom." Mark. He walked toward her shoulders, hunched, jaw clenched, carrying the nervous energy of a man who had rehearsed his lines but forgotten the meaning. Behind him, Lindsay lingered near the column. Sunglasses perched high, her smile brittle. "Can we talk?" Mark asked. Evelyn's eyes didn't lift from her cup. "About which lie?" He winced. "That's not fair. You blindsided us with lawyers and recordings. You could have just talked to me." I tried, she said softly. But you preferred her version of silence. Lindsay folded her arms. We were protecting you. You're emotional lately. Zoe filled your head. Don't use her name. Evelyn, cut in voice sharp enough to turn heads in the hallway. She's the only one who hasn't tried to rewrite me. Lindsay took a step forward, whispering through clenched teeth. Do you realize how humiliating this is? Online comments are tearing me apart. Evelyn looked up, eyes calm but burning. They're only seeing what you showed them. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then Zoe appeared breathless from the courtroom door. Grandma Ava said you should stay hydrated. She handed her a bottle, then noticed Lindsay's glare. Everything okay here? Mark's voice faltered. We're just talking. Zoe's tone was ice. Funny. Talking was never the problem. Listening was. Lindsay exhaled through her nose. This isn't over. Evelyn straightened her back stiff but proud. No, she said. It's just starting. She turned to Mark, voice lowering. You stood by while she mocked me in my own kitchen. You let the house grow colder and called it saving money. Tell me, son, what part of that was protection? Mark's eyes filled not with tears, but with something worse realization. I thought keeping peace meant keeping quiet, he whispered. And now he looked away. Now it feels like cowardice. Evelyn touched his sleeve just once, light as dust. You can change that, but not for me. For the man you used to be. Lindsay rolled her eyes and stepped toward the door. Come on, Mark. She's rewriting history again. No, he said softly. She's finally writing it down. Evelyn didn't smile, but the faintest relief passed through her. She handed Zoe the empty coffee cup and said, Let's go. I'm done whispering. As they walked back toward the courtroom, the corridor lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows behind them. Evelyn didn't look back. She didn't need to. Behind her, Lindsay's heels clicked faster, angrier, desperate to catch up to a version of control that no longer existed. Ahead, the door to the courtroom stood open, a rectangle of light, steady and waiting. Evelyn stepped through it first. The next hearing day began with new voices. Ava called the first witness, Mrs. Patel, the neighbor from across the brownstone courtyard. A petite woman with kind eyes and a trembling voice, she clutched her purse like a shield. I used to see Mrs. Brooks through the window, she said. Always in sweaters, even when the heat should have been on. Sometimes she'd sit by the kitchen table, not moving for hours. I thought maybe she was sick. Ava nodded gently. Did you ever see her family? Mrs. Patel hesitated. Once. The daughter-in-law. Loud voice, nice car. But she never said hello. The courtroom stayed still. Even the judge leaned forward slightly. Next came Mr. Dawson, the mail carrier. She always thanked me, even gave me cookies last Christmas, he said, voice steady. But lately she looked thinner. One day she whispered, Don't worry if you don't hear from me. I'm documenting. I didn't understand then. Ava lifted a single sheet of lined paper from her folder, Evelyn's careful handwriting. Dates, small phrases, precise and patient. The judge read silently for a moment, then looked up. This is detailed, she said softly. Painfully so. Evelyn sat still, her hands folded. The truth no longer needed her voice, it had witnesses now. Across the aisle, Lindsay stared down, nails tapping on the table. Mark's shoulders slumped. Outside, sunlight broke through thin clouds falling across the courtroom floor, like an underline. Evelyn didn't look triumphant. She looked seen. The courtroom was still when the judge returned. Only the hum of the fluorescent lights moved the air. Evelyn sat motionless. Ava beside her pen, poised though nothing remained to write. Judge Marin adjusted her glasses, scanning the final pages in front of her. We've reviewed the recordings, written logs, and testimony. Her voice was low, deliberate. The court finds Mrs. Brooks competent, coherent, and credible. A thin gasp escaped Lindsay's lips. Marin continued, eyes steady. What I heard on that recording wasn't confusion. It was cruelty. The kind often hidden behind politeness until someone has the courage to document it. She looked directly at Lindsay. You called her a witch. You humiliated her in her home. That isn't care, that's control. Lindsay shifted in her seat. Your Honor, I don't. The word landed like a gavel itself. You had your say on video. Ava stood, sliding a single paper across the bench. Lindsay's handwritten letter of partial apology, dated and signed. We submit this for the record, she said. The judge read it silently, then laid it aside. This letter isn't redemption, she said softly. It's proof you knew. Mark's hands were folded tightly on the table. He didn't look up. The judge's tone softened when she turned to Evelyn. You've endured a house colder than winter, and yet you've chosen not vengeance but peace. This court upholds the amendment to your estate and your trust in full, effective immediately. The gavel struck, a clean, echoing sound that seemed to ripple through decades of silence. Evelyn exhaled slowly. Ava smiled, professional but proud. Across the aisle, Lindsay's pearls shifted under her collarbone like beads of regret. When the bailiff opened the doors, daylight poured in bright and golden, breaking through December's gray. Evelyn rose carefully, the brooch on her cardigan catching the sun like a mirror. Mark approached, voice trembling. Mom? I'm sorry. Evelyn looked at him for a long moment. So am I, she said gently. But sorry doesn't fix cold walls. She turned toward the exit, her steps measured, light spilling around her silhouette. Ava whispered, You won, Evelyn. Evelyn's reply was almost a breath. No. I survived. There's a difference. Outside, snow drifted past the courthouse steps, melting as it touched her coat. She tilted her face toward the sun, eyes closed. For the first time in years, the light felt like hers again. The morning after the verdict, Beacon Hill smelled of lavender and rain. Evelyn sat by her window, the same spot where she once watched the snowfall, and wondered if anyone still saw her. Now the mail on her table was stacked high, letters from strangers. Some typed, some written in shaking cursive. My daughter sent me your story. I thought I was alone. Thank you for reminding me that quiet doesn't mean weak. She read each one slowly, tracing every sentence like a rosary bead. These women had never met her yet. They understood her perfectly. On her nightstand, the brooch lay open beside a small vase of lavender. She no longer needed it as a shield. It had done its work. Zoe knocked softly and entered, carrying 2 mugs of cocoa. They're still writing you, Grandma. You're basically famous. Evelyn smiled. Fame fades, but stories stay. She picked up her pen and wrote a single note for Zoe on ivory paper. Don't wait for permission to speak. Silence is the first thing they take. She folded it neatly and tucked it beside the lavender vase. Outside, the sky was clear, pale blue, no longer heavy. Evelyn leaned back, eyes half closed. The world no longer too loud, no longer too cold. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like a survivor. She felt like a beginning. Winter sunlight poured through the university library windows, washing the long tables in gold. Zoe Brooks sat alone, her laptop open but untouched. In front of her lay an envelope, ivory paper. Folded carefully, the scent of lavender. Faint but unmistakable. She unfolded it, reading her grandmother's familiar handwriting. Don't wait for permission to speak. Silence is the first thing they take. The words hit like warmth in cold air. Around her, students whispered about exams, papers, futures. But Zoe's world had gone perfectly still. She reached into her bag and took out the silver brooch, polished light glinting on its tiny lens. She pinned it to her navy coat right over her heart, the same place Evelyn once wore it. Her reflection in the glass showed a young woman with her grandmother's calm eyes and something fiercer purpose. Later that day, Zoe walked into the admissions office form in hand. "I want to change my major," she said. "Elder law and advocacy." The advisor blinked. "That's a tough field." Zoe smiled faintly. "Good. It should be." Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and patient, the way truth always returns. She lifted her face to it, whispering, "For you, Grandma." The brooch caught the light glimmering like a heartbeat that refused to fade, and somewhere in that quiet brightness, Evelyn's words lingered steady, alive, unafraid. 3 months later, Zoe stepped through the courthouse doors her grandmother once exited victorious. The marble floors still gleamed the same faint scent of lemon polish lingering in the air. Her ID badge read, "Legal Intern, Marin District Court." She paused at the threshold of courtroom 3B. The same one, the same bench. Only the weight of memory felt different, lighter now, like justice had exhaled. Judge Marin looked up from her papers. "You're the Brooks intern." "Yes, Your Honor." The judge studied her face, then smiled faintly. "You have your grandmother's eyes." Zoe's throat tightened. "I know. She taught me what seeing really means." Marin nodded, signing a file. "Good. Then let's make sure no one like her ever has to fight that hard again." Zoe's pulse quickened. "That's why I'm here." As she gathered files from the desk, her brooch. Evelyn's brooch caught the light, scattering it against the polished floor. The same glimmer that once lit a courtroom in defiance now danced quietly across the marble as a promise kept. Outside, the wind carried faint laughter from schoolchildren on the steps. Zoe glanced through the window, her reflection framed by sky and glass, her hand resting over the silver pin. "Still watching Grandma," she whispered. No answer. Came only sunlight spilling through the blinds, bright and steady, as if the whole room remembered Evelyn Brooks and chose to shine a little warmer because of her. The Beacon Hill garden was blooming again when Zoe returned. Lavender lined the walkway, the same soft purple her grandmother loved. The air smelled sweet and faintly of soap and paper, a scent she'd never forgotten. Claire, the head nurse, greeted her at the entrance. "She used to sit right there," she said, pointing to the sunroom window. "Every morning at 9 sharp. Tea notebook, always that brooch on her sweater. Said she was keeping her light in order." Zoe smiled. "She still is." They walked to the window seat. On the sill sat a small card in Evelyn's neat handwriting, framed now beneath glass. "Keep your light. The world needs proof that kindness survived." Zoe touched the frame gently, her reflection, mingling with her grandmother's faint photo beside it. The lavender outside swayed in the breeze, brushing against the glass as if nodding hello. "She made everyone here write one kindness rule before she passed," Claire said. "We call it the lavender list. We still add to it." Zoe blinked back a tear. She'd like that. She stepped closer to the window, sunlight falling over her shoulders. The brooch glimmered alive again. "I'll keep it going," she whispered. Outside petals drifted across the garden path, light as memory, bright as resolve. Somewhere between the lavender and the light, Evelyn Brooks seemed to smile, no longer a ghost, just a legacy still in bloom. Snow dusted the Boston streets like powdered glass. Inside her small apartment, Zoe sat by the window, a mug of cocoa, cooling beside her, a blank sheet of stationery before her. She wrote the date carefully at the top, December 24th. The same day, Evelyn once baked her final pie. Dear Grandma, today I helped file a protection order for an 86-year-old woman whose son kept her pension card. I used your line, Dignity isn't given, it's defended. The judge quoted it back to me. You would have smiled. Zoe paused, watching her breath fog against the glass. Outside, the city lights glowed warm in the snow's hush. Sometimes I still hear your voice when I read case notes. It says, "Ask what's missing." Silence hides there. I'm learning, Grandma, and I'm not afraid anymore. She folded the letter neatly, tied it with a lavender ribbon, and opened the window just enough for the cold to rush in. The paper fluttered once before. The wind carried it away up past the rooftops into the soft, white dark. Delivery guaranteed, she whispered, smiling. The brooch on her sweater caught the faint lamplight, casting tiny reflections across the desk like scattered stars. Somewhere she felt she knew. Evelyn's warmth was still near, carried on the same air that moved the snow. Spring sunlight poured through the tall windows of Boston University's law auditorium. Zoe stood at the lectern palms pressed lightly on the wood, her grandmother's silver brooch pinned over her heart. Behind her on the screen glowed the title of her presentation, The Evelyn Brooks Case, When Silence Becomes Evidence. Dozens of students leaned forward. Some had read about it online. Others were just now hearing how an elderly woman turned documentation into armor, how a single word no could echo louder than years of neglect. Zoe spoke without notes. Her voice was calm, deliberate, carrying the same gravity Evelyn once used in her quiet kitchen. She didn't fight with anger, Zoe said. She fought with proof, and she didn't want revenge just to be seen. When the projector showed a still image of Evelyn's handwritten line, "Keep your light. The world needs proof that kindness survived," the room went completely still. A student in the front row whispered, "That's beautiful." Zoe smiled. It's law, too. The humane kind. When she finished, her professor gray-haired stern, but moved rose slowly and said, "You turned testimony into legacy, Miss Brooks." Zoe looked down at the brooch, its light catching her sleeve. I just kept her words alive. Applause filled the hall, soft but steady like rain after a long drought. Outside, the trees had begun to bloom again, and in every pale petal, Zoe saw her grandmother's light still proving, still surviving. Late afternoon sun stretched long shadows across the small cemetery on Beacon Hill. The snow had melted into glassy puddles, reflecting streaks of gold and violet from the sky. Zoe walked slowly between the stones, her fingers brushing each lavender bloom that had survived the frost. In her hand, she carried a single white envelope, her last letter. Evelyn's grave was modest. A stone bench beside it, smooth from years of wind, bore the inscription, Evelyn Brooks. She kept the light. Zoe knelt, setting the envelope at the base of the stone. I finished the seminar, she whispered. They listened. Every single one of them. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of lavender and rain. She smiled, remembering her grandmother's voice, gentle but unyielding. Write it down, even if your hands shake. I did, Grandma, and I'll keep doing it. Her eyes filled not with grief, but with something softer, continuity. She looked up toward the low sun and saw it glance off the brooch pinned to her coat. The tiny lens still caught light the way it once caught truth. Zoe pressed it once between her fingers and whispered, "Recording." The red light blinked faintly. Her voice, steady, now filled the quiet air. This is Zoe Brooks, granddaughter of Evelyn Brooks, of sound mind and clear purpose. She taught me that proof can heal, that kindness can fight, and that no one, no matter their age, is ever invisible. She paused, smiling, through tears. The light continues. She clicked the brooch off and sat for a moment longer. In the distance, church bells rang, echoing through the cold air like a benediction. Before leaving, she placed a sprig of lavender on the stone, its color deep and defiant against the pale granite. As she stood, the wind rose, scattering petals across the path, spinning them through shafts of fading sunlight. Zoe watched them dance her coat, glowing faintly gold, her silhouette framed by the horizon. Then she turned, walking back toward the city, toward the courthouse, the classrooms, the voices still waiting to be heard. Behind her, the last light of day slid across Evelyn's name, igniting the carved words for a brief, shining moment. She kept the light, and now it kept them both. How did this story touch you? Tell us in the comments and rate it from 1 to 10. If it moved your heart, please like, share, and subscribe. Tap the so you won't miss our next emotional story. And before you go, click on the end screen to discover more powerful, heartwarming tales waiting just for you. See you in the next story.